Welcome to Jurassic World.
Good morning, guests, and welcome to the Jurassic World Minute, where we'll be visiting Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And on this episode, we're going to be retracing the 14-year journey from Jurassic Park 3 into what would have been Jurassic Park 4 and eventually the evolution into Jurassic World. David, the road to Jurassic Park 4, it's interesting. It did take 14 years to get there. Jurassic Park 3, it's sort of, with its $93 million budget, it still made back almost $369 million worldwide, so it wasn't a complete failure. In today's market, then yeah, that would have been seen as a pretty big bomb, but it was still the 8th highest earner in 2001, so it was still up there with the first X-Men movie, Spider-Man, and all the other big films of the summer. But it was still only half the box office of The Lost World, which was only beaten in '97 by Titanic. Damn you, James Cameron. So it's only natural that after Jurassic Park 3's release, works would start on a Part 4 straight away. By this time, I'd entered the workforce and was sort of away from the series, but I seem to remember either Joe Johnston or Kathleen Kennedy saying that they were going to get straight into it. Because I'm pretty sure Sam Neill had confirmed by then that, no, he's done, he's out. And I think someone else as well, but this is only going off memories. I can't find any articles from that time because most of the stuff from back then's on fan sites or other stuff that no longer exists online. But the Jurassic Park 4 didn't happen as fast as fans wanted. David, you were there. When did Legacy start?
Legacy started in 2015, but I didn't actually join it until 2011, so a lot of my knowledge of the early days of then were kind of scant. I know I kind of went back and reread a lot of the old articles and stuff that when I first joined the site that had been posted. There was things that I was like gonna start soon. They're working on a script, and it just went on like that for years. Probably 3 or 4 years of just, we're working on a script, we're putting something together, we're working on something, and nothing ever came of it until, of course, 2012 when it was announced.
Yeah, that's weird because I seem to remember signing up to Legacy in 2007 or 8, but that must have been something else.
I mean, it could have been. It was around at the time, but I just wasn't there.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, well, got a quote. Universal Pictures is intended to begin production on a 4th Jurassic film in 2004, and with a mid-2005 release, but development stalled while the script underwent several revisions. Following a suggestion from executive producer Steven Spielberg, writers Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver explored the idea of a fictional or functional dinosaur park. And once Trevorrow was hired on in 2013, he sort of followed the same idea and continued that script forward with Derek Connolly. But there was one script going around at the time, and it's famously known by a lot of fans, the John Sayles Jurassic Park 4 script. That
oh yes, the infamous Sayles script. Jurassic Park Legacy coined the term Dino Crafters.
Again, not knowing dates of articles and everything else, I wonder when the Sayles script was known. I'm guessing it come after the some of the concept art with the human raptor hybrids and that sort of stuff come out.
That actually didn't become revealed until Jurassic World was already in production. The sales script, I want to say, came about sometime pre-2010, and it was infamous, basically. I mean, people made fun of it all over the place. It became kind of synonymous with like some of the worst ideas in the history of bad ideas.
I wonder if it was a reverse reaction, like Ryan Reynolds putting out that Deadpool footage and everyone loving it, so Fox going ahead and making it, where here they've put the sales script down, everyone hating it, so they've decided not to do it. But yeah, well, that sounds like those dark times from 2001 to 2008 or 9. I didn't miss a lot then that was happening in the franchise, but many elements of that script ended up, or you can see parts of it in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, including the corporate mansion up in the hills and splicing weaponized animals. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a scene in Jurassic World 3 where we get pteranodons attacking a baseball game, because that's sort of one big thing on the mainland that they haven't shown yet that existed.
Oh, let's not forget the paratrooping Ankylosaurus.
There's some good and bad bits about that script that we'll get to in a minute. Sorry, I've just got a prompt to restart my computer. Don't want that. But Sayles was a famous B-movie writer, and probably one of his best films that people would know him for is Piranha from 78, I believe, and he'd done a lot of those creature features back in the 70s and 80s, so what we get with the Indominus Rex sort of fits in that creature feature as well, just an unstoppable killing machine that's coming after everyone. But it's sort of interesting too, in the Sayles script, Chris Pratt's hero appears to have its origins from Nick Harris, which is the leading character in the script. Currently unemployed soldier of fortune and an ex-Navy SEAL. And when we first meet Nick, he's being hired for a top-secret job by one John Hammond. The Deepazos, the creator of Jurassic Park, are now the most sued person in the history of the world, which I thought makes perfect sense after The Lost World.
Yeah. I was going to say, I remember that there was one rumor that came about, I think, sometime after the sales script was out, and those designs were revealed, that the concept art and the concept maquettes that they had posted, there was a rumor that I think Spielberg at one point was so, what's the word, when he was just not, he didn't think the prospects for Jurassic World were going to be good, so he thought possibly just make the worst Jurassic Park movie possible and bury it, just be done with it.
Interesting he's thinking that he never returned for a Jaws sequel. Maybe a few years after he'd thought, nah, this is it with franchises. But yeah, you can have a read through the script yourselves. I'll put the link. But the general plot, having long since lost control of Jurassic Park and his company, InGen, Hammond now owns a less impressive venture, an aviary full of large birds, but otherwise is still the same jovial old gent. He always was. Jurassic Park, meanwhile, has been taken over by the Grendel Corporation, a Swiss company which claims to have cleaned the island of its pesky dinosaurs. But that hasn't stopped several smaller creatures, including pteranodons and Compsognathus, from escaping to the outside world and wreaking havoc. Hammond, therefore, has a plan to create a new breed of highly aggressive but reproductively neutral individuals to wipe out the last remaining dinosaurs. So he's basically going to clone dinosaurs to go in and kill the other dinosaurs. Which could... No, we'll leave the Spinosaurus. There's only one problem. The genetic material Hammond wants for his project is still on Isla Nublar. It's the canister of shaving cream left in the mud by ill-fated Dennis Nedry back in 1993. So even in the 2000s, they're still thinking that damn cryocan is there.
Well, that was something that Spielberg kind of always wanted to do. There's a interview with him during the making of the first movie where he says that there's that canister out there still ready to rear 8 ugly heads. And so it's just interesting that the canister is always kind of something Spielberg wanted to go back to, but just ended up never going back to it. And at this point in the story, it's long gone.
Yeah, there's a time constraint there, and if you're going to go back and get it, it's got to be a period piece shot in 93, maybe just for the start, to show that someone one, knew about it, and two, knew its location, and three, was able to go in and get it while the whole mayhem of the evacuation was going on and the 93 incident. But
and it's interesting how heavily Hammond was featured in the sales script, because I remember that Sir Richard Attenborough was very interested in returning for another Jurassic Park movie, but it just never happened before it. It just never happened before his accident in 2008, where I think he fell down some stairs and was paralyzed or something.
Yeah, he wasn't the same after that. He's bedridden, I think, or something. Yeah, but we'll get to a little bit of that, because he wasn't the only one that was looking to come back as well. Nick's task is to head to Isla Nublar, whisk a Henniser out from Grendel's nose, and bring it back to Hammond. Naturally, things don't go according to plan. William Monahan, who done The Departed and Kingdom of Heaven, was the first screenwriter to step up to the plate, announcing at the time that Keira Knightley was reportedly in the running for the major role. I'm just thinking mid-2000s, this would have been just before the first Pirates film too, so I think she'd done something else, and I might be thinking of Natalie Portman, but
I know that Keira Knightley's kind of big break as a star did happen in 1999 with Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, where she played Natalie Portman's double on the movie.
Yep. But around that time too, Jeff Goldblum and Richard Attenborough were also thought to be returning respective roles of Ian Malcolm and Hammond. So whether they wanted Jeff to come back or whether Jeff had said, "Hey, I'd like to come back. I'm doing every second film. I might as well be back for 4." That was a report anyway. But as the 2000s wore on, Jurassic Park 4, as it was then widely dubbed, refused to budge. Directors were attached and detached. Breck Eisner was among the names, and then John Sayles was brought on to rework Monahan's early script. Sayles certainly seemed like a logical choice to write the Jurassic Park screenplay. He was the writer of Creature Features, as we said before, for Playful Edge, Dumb Piranha in 78, Alligator in 80, and The Howling for Dante, which I haven't seen any of those films, but he also collaborated with Spielberg in the early 80s, which Sayles wrote a screenplay called Night Skies, an abandoned project which later inspired E.T., which is one of Spielberg's probably more well-known movies. When Sayles clambered aboard in mid-2004, it was reported that Jurassic Park 4 was being optimistically scheduled for release in the winter of the following year, as I said before, 2005, but that didn't go too well, and the film didn't make a particular deadline, apparently, because the various drafts of the script being turned in around that time weren't passing muster for Spielberg. Special effects guru or genius Stan Winston confirmed this as much in April 2005 when he told IGN he felt neither of the drafts balanced the science and adventure elements effectively. It's a tough compromise to reach, as too much science will make the movie too talky, but too much adventure will make it seem hollow. So it was good to see that Spielberg was keeping a firm reins on the project and not letting just any old story come to light. Which 2005, what were you doing with Crystal Skull? That's a whole different argument.
From what I've heard, honestly, though, a lot of people who worked on the film attribute Lucas more than Spielberg to the writing failings on that movie.
Oh, I heard a theory the other day where you could remove where that would have been a perfect Star Wars film. The fact that it sort of takes place in a Indiana Jones world is what makes it not work. But yeah, it was later announced that Sayles' screenplay had been scrapped and that Joe Johnston was intended to teaming with the dinosaur expert Jack Horner, which we know from Jurassic Park 3, that's going to go well, and to write an entirely new script and so continued a decade-long churn of writers and directors, which continued right up until 2013 when the franchise received an unlikely saviour. Now, of course, I'm reading all this from an article, so I wouldn't say saviour, but Colin Trevorrow come in together with his writing partner Derek Connolly, who had worked with him on Safety Not Guaranteed, set about rewriting most of the recent draft of Jurassic World screenplay. This one written by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, which done Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is a great film. But again, most of this info here I've just read off from the Den of Geek site, which I'll include a link to as well, because they go through and examine the sales script and have a link to the sales script there as well. But that brings us to Jurassic World itself. Once production started, I was sort of back in the fandom by then, starting to see shots from Hawaii supplied to us by Real Tours, and that's when the hype for the film really started.
Yeah, I remember. To kind of tell this story, I got to go back again to 2006, and I remember being, what was I in 2000? I was 11 or 12, I think. And so what basically was, I knew of Jurassic Park Legacy, but I only knew of the Encyclopedia front side. I never actually joined the forum. I assumed in my 12-year-old mind that a forum was a credits page for some reason. I had no idea what it was. So I just never touched it. And so fast forward 2011, 2010, 2011, I'm starting to kind of join my own kind of fandoms online. And I remember bouncing around to various ones, Terminator, Jaws, stuff like that. And 2009, I think I was the first online forum I joined was the James Cameron Avatar forum, and then bouncing over to the michaelmyers.net forum for my Michael Myers fandom that I eventually got into around that time, before remembering, oh wait, I just remembered that Jurassic Park Legacy is around. I'll go join up on there. And so that happened around in 2011, and a year later there was the announcement that, okay, we're actually working on something again with Jurassic Park 4. And this was like really big news, because this was kind of in a dormant period between 07, 08 and 2012, where there was no news. There was nothing. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody even expected it to ever get made. And so I remember 2012, it was really big news when Spielberg actually came out and said, okay, we're actually working on something again. And then Kathleen Kennedy said that we were confident in this one because we didn't want to make anything that we weren't confident in making. She was like, I think she said that she didn't want, what was the quote? She didn't want to make a movie that wasn't worth making, was what she said.
After Jurassic Park 3. Was that was Comic-Con, wasn't it, 2012, where Spielberg come out? Because he doesn't normally go to events like that, and him being there would have been special to see. Yeah, and then of course social media, we started seeing production shots coming out. I remember the helipad up on the hill, the IREX enclosure, which one person got on set and had Diabolus Rex written in text on the back of one of the sets, so that was sort of we'd heard rumours of a D-Rex, some sort of a hybrid creature or something like that, but later. Yeah,
some of the early fan renditions of the D-Rex, as it was called, it was spray painted, I think, and I think it was a crew member took a picture of it. It was spray painted on the Indominus enclosure set, D-Rex on the back of a piece of plywood. And I remember around the time, like you said, there was rumors of this hybrid creature that was going to be part snake and part pit viper or something. But it was the Chimera as it was in the movie.
Yeah. But
different creatures. And so these fan edits, they were showing like I think one of the more famous ones was somebody took the T-Rex and the Lost World T-Rex maquette picture and photoshopped one of the claws into a raptor claw, and then photoshopped a snake head on like a pit viper or some kind of viper snake's head onto it. So it had these big fangs coming down from the front of the snout, and it was A lot of them were just plain ugly. I'll say that in retrospect.
Well, even now, you Google any sort of that concept art, or even just what people have done on DeviantArt now. There's Tyrannosaurs with 2 heads. There's T-Rexes with multiple heads. Claws that are just impossible, and we'll get to that later with the Indominus Rex too. But yeah, a lot of fan art out there that sort of took what we were rumoured and ran with it.
I found one of them. I actually just found the one that I was just describing on online. I just Googled it real quick. I found it on Pinterest.
Yeah, there's a lot on there as well. Yeah. I do remember one photo from Real Tours. It was a shot looking across a valley in green, and they just said possible perimeter gates there, which the Jeep went through from the helipad. We know now that's not in the film, and of course, for some reason, people can't take clear photos of a lot of the time, and it's probably zoomed in that far too, because of being able to get close to the set. But I'm guessing now they'll the gates we see the boys drive through later on. But we had that, and we had the Drivesphere station as well being built up in the valley on the ranch. A lot of it definitely getting that hype up. There was concept art of the main street and the main resort. I remember seeing real high, more sort of Fijian cliffs and that real high stuff, and sort of real big futuristic type white sail buildings and that for the resort, the main building, and all the little sort of like your over water accommodation. I don't know what you'd call them, like little huts on piles over water.
And stilts. That was actually a real concept out there. That one I remember had a funny story attached to it too. There was rumored at some point that there would be a bar scene in Jurassic World with Miley Cyrus doing a song for the movie that would be in the background of that bar scene. And everybody was just astounded, like, "Oh my God, keep Miley Cyrus away from this." Of course, it turned out to never be true, but at the time it was fun. In retrospect, it was funny.
Well, a lot of stuff. I remember too. There was the marine park side of things, the amphitheatre with the big screen. It looked like a sort of a smaller, what you'd see at a dolphin or whale show. We'll get to it later with some of the aerials we'll see of the main resort area, but a lot of that stuff we've seen production photos of, and that just never ended up in the film at all. And I think going into it, that's probably one of the biggest dislikes fans have of Jurassic World itself, is just you don't see a lot of the park. You sort of you get those little hints at the zoo, the petting zoo and stuff like that, but the place is massive, and we get to see Main Street and the Hilton, and that's about it.
True. Yeah, I remember you had the helipad listed here. I remember the first thoughts I had when I saw them building that was, I mean, nobody else could agree on what it was. I was the first one to say that's a helipad, because I remember thinking it looked just like the helipad from Trespasser, the one on the side of the mountain at the end of the game. And that looks just like the helipad from Trespasser. How can you guys not see it?
But even then, and something they do in the film is having some sort of set like that, then CG extend it, and just the fact that you see this helipad on the side of the hill, and what we see later in the film is the fact that no, it's actually on top of a building. There's a whole building under it that was not there, not there for the set, and that's just movie magic. But I just remember a lot of fans, even once the film had come and gone, people were making the trek up there and taking photos on that set. You had the yellow handrails and the big helipad sort of signage and that on the floor of it.
I was going to say that's before they took it down.
Yeah, then one day we got a photo of them bulldozing it or deconstructing it, which was just a shame. As we've said many a times, a lot of these sets are built to be shot on, then tore down again. It's either luck or good management or planning or pleading from someone over there that the Indominus Rex enclosure managed to stay there and not get torn down for the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it was at the behest of the landowners. They asked that it be refurbished in a more durable material so that it could be kept as a tourist piece for them, because I think it's in around like the same spot that they did something else. I can't remember what it was, but I do remember that the landowners had requested that the production come back in and just not like tear it down and redo the entire thing, but just kind of give a support structure, you know.
And we know famously from real tours that lasted about 12 months before it started to rot in the humidity in the tropics. But
I do remember. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say briefly that's a legal requirement too of production companies, and that if they're filming on private land or anything like that, they're required legally to set up the sets, film, and then return the land to as it was beforehand. So that's a lot of the stuff that's built on Hawaii. That's what sort of happens there. Whether the landowner or someone wants it left or not, because if something happens after the crews leave and there's injuries or any sort of lawsuits that try and come out of it, well, they were legally required to pull it down. They didn't.
Yeah, you also have the Indominus enclosure mentioned here. I remember some of the first pictures of that when I first saw it was somebody took it like at the edge of a creek that was running behind it, and it just looked really cool. Nobody had any idea what it was, but everybody thought, oh, that looks really cool. And I just always thought it was kind of a shame that we never got those kind of angles actually in the film to actually see it.
Well, there's a lot of concept art and fan art. That's a problem by now. We've seen that much, whether it's fan art or actual concept art. But even just inside where there's the moat around it and sort of the raised land in the middle that it sort of lived on.
Like there's another, going back to the Indominus, there was somebody who photoshopped the sideshow Allosaurus figure into one of these set pick leaks, and I think that was one that actually went viral the most, was of the fakes, was the sideshow Allosaurus picture. And I saved all of them. I'm going to have everything that got posted up and leaked, I actually saved on my computer, even some of the things that some people might not want out, like crew pictures people would be embarrassed to see now.
Just keep an eye out for that red dot on your chest.
Yeah.
That's all right. They don't know where you live. Not yet. A lot of the stuff, again, we're seeing before the film come out, definitely keen on. Now, I'm going to preface this as we go on with just my thoughts of what they actually did put on film before we review it, because it's interesting. Although it's technically part 4, I can only see it as a soft reboot. There's a trend in studios taking, at the moment, old successful films and adding a similar budget or a bigger budget and new characters and telling the same story. We've seen it sort of recently with Terminator Dark Fate. At the same time, Star Wars The Force Awakens come out. Now that that saga's finished and we're about to head into the third film with Fallen Kingdom, I can definitely see sort of mirror or comparisons between the two. David, we haven't talked Rise of Skywalker, because a lot of people were shitting on it. I didn't really want to add to that or one way or another. Let's have a 2-minute Star Wars tangent, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy The Rise of Skywalker?
I did, yes, very much. It was like I said to a friend of mine who didn't see it. I can see how they can say there was a lot of member berries in it. If anybody's aware of that term, it's coined by South Park, basically nostalgia bait for the fans. Mm-hmm. And I could agree with that. Despite that, though, the movie was still a ton of fun, and I still loved it.
Yep, no, agreed. So that's all right. We wouldn't have talked too much crap about it anyway. It's sort of one sort of thing a lot of people are talking about, and I think it's true. Is it seems that Kathleen Kennedy or whoever was running the story of the new 3 films sort of didn't have a full picture going forward, just because of the changes from JJ to Rian Johnson and back again. and then JJ sort of taking what Rian Johnson had done and pretty much throwing it all out, or throwing the middle finger up to it, which was a shame because it just hurts the trilogy on a whole. And I wonder, I'm sort of scared that we're going to see the same thing here, where we had Colin and we had Bayona come in, and yes, Colin was there with him and didn't just walk away from the set like JJ did and not tell Johnson anything. But it sort of does have me concerned for Jurassic World 3 and where that's going to go, but we can discuss more of that when we sort of get to it. It's sort of the film's, it's mainly one to entertain adults with nostalgia, as you said before, of the earlier films, and then tell a basic story so kids can follow and love. But then sort of some of the story gets a bit basic in here, and then especially in the Fallen Kingdom as well, that I'm not really a big fan of. But I remember when the trailers started coming out, and there was a lot of YouTube and entertainment sites posting the side-by-side scenes of just how similar the trailer was, even the way the trailer was made to the original Jurassic Park trailer, and the same sort of sequences where you had gyrospheres instead of the explorers, the same sort of attack on that, and a lot of other stuff as well, which can sort of add to me little thoughts there about they're just trying to do a reboot, soft reboot of it, and we'll get there when we get to Fallen Kingdom. Like the whole mosasaur, the lagoon, all that sort of stuff shows that yes, they might have had a basic idea of what was going to happen, but that's about as far as it went. Otherwise, things would have been different in Jurassic World, so we wouldn't have locations changing and all that sort of stuff in the future, in Fallen Kingdom at least anyway. We'll see what happens when the third one comes out. But after all that, and after sort of getting back into the film and doing the run sheets and all that for the podcast, there's a lot of stuff I'm really enjoying. Like, Hawaii looks absolutely fantastic. I've just started Lost rewatch, and I need to get over there because it's a very beautiful place, and I'm glad they're filming there. I'm glad that they're returning there for whatever is going to happen in Jurassic World 3 to film, whether it's flashbacks or whatever else. But there are some issues with it, and I'm going to talk about that more when we get to the minutes relating to it. But David, what was your thought on Jurassic World? Now we're 5 or 6 years removed.
Well, first I was going to mention that I remember that a couple things that were really big that happened during the marketing of the movie itself was things like, in retrospect, I think we called it Plategate, because during the marketing... you remember this?
Remind me. Oh, was that the party plates? The party...
Yes, the party plates with the Indominus Rex on it, which, by the way, I remember hating when they first announced the name change. I remember, that sounds stupid. I like the Diabolus Rex. What's wrong with Diabolus Rex? And like, oh, well, there's apparently some Satanist with the name. And like, oh, come on.
It just reminds me when Owen and Claire are walking up the stairs to the Indominus cage, and she tells him what it is, and he's just like, Indominus Rex. Just, like, laughing at that name as well, but I can imagine him doing the same thing with Diabolus Rex as well. But
yeah, and I remember, like, everybody pounding on JP Legacy for showing it, and they're like, did you people not think that this wasn't going to happen? I mean, like, it's marketing, people. This is what happens when during marketing things get revealed.
Yeah, and something like that, which is obvious that that's where the film's going. And then you've got the other side of the coin with Fallen Kingdom, and I know Jurassic Outpost were pushing the whole volcano thing really hard, and the fact that a lot of the Jurassic World toy packaging had a volcano on it, but I think
because, and this is a theory, mind you. I mean, it has no basis, but there was a kind of a news war between Jurassic Outpost, who at the time was calling themselves JurassicWorld.org, and there was Jurassic Park Legacy. They're trying to outcompete each other in the news game, and at the time, Jurassic Outpost was winning because, and this is my theory, they had gotten somehow their hands on an earlier script, the one that did have the volcano ending, the pre-Connolly script, I think it was.
A volcano ending for Jurassic World.
Yes, there was originally going to be there's concept art of this as well, where there was going to be the volcano that actually, comes back in Fallen Kingdom, was going to erupt at the end of the film. Thus kind of sealing the fate of the assumed fate of the dinosaurs, and in a way giving the movie closure if it didn't do well at the box office. But then they brought Trevorrow and Connolly in, and I assume that kind of interest and confidence in the movie went up, and they left the ending more open-ended for another sequel.
Well, from memory, Colin's whole pitch to Universal for the film was a free film deal, and he had the basic story for the free films.
Yeah.
And I always put it up to the fact that, hey, you look at any dinosaur artwork, any dinosaur toys, they've always got volcanoes on them. But that whole sort of feud between fan groups and fans, news sites and that, it's not Jurassic World. I can guarantee there's probably a dozen Star Wars sites out there that are all fighting over each other trying to get the little skip of news. And that's just journalism on the whole. Like, it's a shame that people have to be so ruthless and that sort of stuff to get the first story and get the first word out. And
it was my assumption, because I always found it kind of hypocritical that everybody jumped on the throat of JP Legacy for revealing these plates when every week JurassicWorld.org would reveal little plot points that they left unsourced, which led me to believe that they had somehow gotten their hands on an earlier script.
Either that, or I know at the time they were, when they started their podcast up as well, they were in contact with Trevorrow and talking behind the scenes, so obviously knowing stuff and not being able to say or whatever, but in the end, I remember listening to some of those podcasts, and they're blatantly telling you exactly what's going to happen, and it's sort of, guys, there's some little hints at a trailer or marketing or something, and you're completely just using that as an excuse to lay it all out there. But anyway, we don't need to go too much into that.
Yeah. As for my thoughts post seeing the movie, I remember going into it kind of feeling uneasy about it. I was kind of worried about this whole shiny, polished look to the film. I didn't think it looked dark or gritty enough. And in retrospect, now I do kind of still hold that thought. But I remember directly after seeing the movie, I remember I still didn't like it as much as The Lost World, but I did know that it was better than Jurassic Park 3, and I still think that.
I suppose briefly to looking at the score, Michael Giacchino coming on to replace Williams, and